It's boy Blackbeard Mirage. I'm back. Time to go into some more old American history. Want to just clear some more cobwebs up. Salute all the people out there, my new subscribers and my new viewers. I see the counters rising. I see the comments are rising. I'm appreciative of all that. Welcome to the Mirage universe. We're here where we learn about the occult. We learn about human interactions and human behavior. And then we learn about ancient or old history, pertaining and concerning the so-called black people of America. All right. So in today's tape, we're going to go over some of the, just some various, facts about the old world, the ancient world, and just some stuff concerning us. And a lot of us, we already know about the ancient Aboriginal cultures on this continent, that we have misnamed Native American, that we've misnamed Indian, that we've misnamed Negro, African American and black. We already know that these Aboriginal people actually were so-called black people that had turbans and feathers and all types of attire that showed that they were autochthonous to the land. Now, autochthonous really is going to mean that you just sprouted straight out of the earth and you were born from the earth. OK, if you look into some of the Hebrew mystery systems, they will say that Adam, or the original man, was made out of, the so-called clay, or made out of earth. And you can take this a lot of ways. But as of right now, we're going to take that as the carbon or the primal earth material that man is made out of. All right. So man, or the Aborigine, or even a Moor, because when you look up the word Moor, it's going to just mean land and water, basically. OK, so a Moor, or an earthling, or a man or a woman, is basically just somebody made out of the physical earth material, and they have been infused with spirit. All right. That is what an earthling really is. OK, and we're going to look a little deeper into some of the cultures and traditions and some of the ancient languages that were spoken here on the old America, old Amexem land. All right. So now we need to go a little deeper and penetrate deeper into this, mystery, because we already know that the people here may have been so-called black, etc. But now we need to look more into what were their religions and what were their cultures and what did they speak, so we could give a whole, clearer picture of all this. So yes, you already are going to picture an Aboriginal American with skin that looks like this, and that's going to have on feathers just like you see in front of you. But now we're going to look deeper into what the language was that these people spoke and some of the different ideologies and principles that they may have had. So a lot of this information I'm going to give you right now is coming from the author by the name of Barry Fell. OK, now Barry Fell is actually a Harvard professor, and he came out with a lot of information on ancient America. So if you want to know deeper into what I'm going into, you got to look up Barry Fell, because Barry Fell took a lot of the languages found in ancient America and correlated them to some of these other languages that we thought may have been in the Far East, but they have a presence right here in old America. All right. So we're going to look deep into one of them right now, and that is the so-called Arabic language, or the Arabic culture, or the Arab culture. OK, now a lot of people always say that, Moors are so-called Muslims or Muslims. All right. And this information is coming from you just seeing people call themselves Moors that deal with the religion known as Islam, or the science known as Islam. So we're going to just go into how that, has been practiced on this land for quite some time, and how a lot of so-called black people were not forced into Islam, or were not forced into being so-called Muslims or Muslims by these amalgamated, bleached out Arabs that you all see, or these tawny Arabs, or these Mamelukes, or these Janissaries that you see running around today that are professing a so-called Arab culture. They are not the original Arabs. The original Arabs are actually so-called black people. All right. And it may not even been some so-called black people over in the Middle East. It could have been some right here on the American soil. So some of these original Arabs, even that I'm talking about, were these same copper-colored indigenous people wearing feathers and turbans and things of that nature on this soil. All right. So Barry Fell is a good source, because a lot of y'all want to know the source. It's Barry Fell. All right. So I'm about to go into some ancient Kufic, or ancient Arabic writing or language that was actually found and spoken here on the American soil. Ancient Kufic script was employed for the Arabic language before the modern Arabic came into general use. This example dates from approximately 700 AD and occurs in Nevada, America, where it was mistaken for Amerindian markings of about 1000 BC. Is it actually a religious text and reads Nabi Allah Muhammad? Allah's prophet is Muhammad. It was probably cut into the rocks as part of the permanent school lessons of the Muslim settlers of the Southwest. Sample of Words from Saga America by Barry Feld. So this guy named Barry Feld, this Harvard professor, he has multiple books, America BC, and here's another one by the name of Saga America. But in this book, he goes into the ancient American Arabic languages and how they were mistaken for these Amerindian languages. Now, this is also the same because a lot of these Amerindian languages that they thought the Cherokee was speaking actually turned out to be ancient Hebrew languages. Okay. So Barry Feld, not only did he find a lot of Phoenician Hebrew languages being spoken by the indigenous people here, he found the predecessor to what we call the Arabic language being spoken by the people here as well. All right. And it says that a stone, or basically a rock that had some religious text concerning Muhammad and Allah, was found in Nevada. Okay. And it was dated around 700 AD. So that's one of your first resources for this tape, that around 700 AD, well, that's what they were dating it to, at least, in Nevada, in the so-called North America. You know, you all know about Nevada, don't you? They say that in Nevada, they found rocks that had Arabic writing on there concerning Muhammad and Allah. And they said that these rocks probably were part of a permanent school or school lessons that the Muslim settlers of the Southwest set up. All right. The origin of Kufic, or the angular style of Arabic script, is traced back to about 100 years before the foundation of Kufa, to which town it owes its name because of its development there. Note from SM Arabic Writing and Arabic Libraries, 1983, Taha Publishers, London, page 12. So this is giving you the source of this. So apparently these notes are coming from SM IMAMUDDIN, Arabic Writing and Arabic Libraries, 1983, Taha Publishers, Limited, London, page 12. Okay, let's continue. The Kara, called Kufic script, is the earliest Kara, so-called Arabic script, and is related to the family of Muhammad through Ali, Fatima, and Bilal. Bilal's descendants moved through Africa to West Africa, present-day Morocco, and across the seas to the Americas, and left these inscriptions in Nevada at a school established there. The Arabic script, or Kopt, is one which is now known as Kufic. From it evolved all the present pens. These notes come from, basically it's this Arabic book that's rather hard to pronounce, and I'm not going to even try to. So right here you have some of these old writings, and they're saying that these old writings are actually going to be the responsibility of the descendants or the bloodline of Muhammad through Ali, Fatima, and Bilal. And they say that some of these Muslims or some of these Moroccans traveled to old America from West Africa hundreds of years ago, and they set up a lot of these schools in the Americas. Okay, so this is also backing up the book, The Slave Revolts in Bahia, Brazil, where I went into the past, where I talked about how a lot of our ancestors here were Muslim, or so-called dealing with the Islamic sciences. All right. So now we're going to kind of fast forward, and we're going to read about the ancient Arabic script and the vocabulary of the Algonquin Indians. Okay. Now, a lot of us will hear this term Algonquin, ALGONQUIAN, Algonquin Indians. And we will hear this, and we got to understand that this is actually a language or a so-called culture that a particular group of Aborigines had on the American soil. All right. So we're going to look deeper into that. And as I said, this information is coming from Barry Feld out of Harvard University. All right. This is called the Epigraphic Society Occasional Publications, Volume 3, Number 54, September of 1976. Ancient Arabic Script and Vocabulary of the Algonquin Indians, or the Algonquin Moors, or the Algonquin Aborigines, produced by Barry Feld of Harvard University. Let's continue. While examining the Algonquin materials in the Peabody Museum collection at Harvard University, my attention was drawn by Mr. Joseph Germano to an old birch bark manuscript labeled as of Cree origin, carrying two horizontal lines of script lettered in black. The script I was mystified to observe is that of the ancient Arab city of Palmyra in Syria, a rival of Rome, totally destroyed by the Emperor Aurelianus in 272 AD. The script found on stellars in the ruins of Palmyra was deciphered in modern times, and it seems inconvincibly that an Indian Cree could have become acquainted with it a century ago when the birch bark text was written. I therefore made an investigation of this matter. So what you have right here is Barry Field, I guess when he was looking through some Algonquin materials at the Peabody Museum at Harvard University, his attention was brought to an old birch manuscript that had been labeled, Cree origin. So just like they had when they found those old Hebrew manuscripts, but they had labeled them as being Cherokee languages, you kind of had the same thing here. They found some old manuscripts and they were labeling them of possibly being of Cree origin. But these scripts, when they were actually analyzed by Barry Field, he observed that they were the same from the ancient Arab city of Palmyra in Syria, which rivaled Rome. Okay, so first of all is this. Here in the Americas, you have an Algonquin Aborigines or Algonquin Indians speaking a language and using the same type of hieroglyphic letters or alphabet that also showed up in Palmyra, Syria. First of all, Syria and the Americas are nowhere near each other. Okay, so that means if you got something traveling from Syria to the Americas and back and forth, that means somebody had to been carrying this information, and maybe it was some type of trade going on or some type of communication between the people of Syria and the people of the Americas. So what this is showing you right here is that the people of Syria and the people of the old Americas knew very, very, much about each other. Okay. And these ancient Arabs of America and these ancient Arabs of Syria probably were even related. Okay. And were doing long distance trading and long distance communication. All right. So what you got to remember is a lot of our ancestors, not only would they trade natural resources that may have come from the land or the geographic region that they were from and they were indigenous to, but they would also trade stories. They would also trade certain mindsets and ideologies. They would also trade mythical heroes. That's why you see all these Christ heroes show up in all these different cultures. So this is what you have here. So these Cree Aborigines or these Algonquin speaking Aborigines in America had to have some kind of communication or dialogue or connection with these Arabs from Syria. Okay. Then it also says here that the ancient city of Palmyra in Syria was actually destroyed by the rivals of Rome. Okay. Now you got to remember that during this time, a lot of these people in the Holy Roman Empire may have been some amalgamated, bleached out Moors. So we still not talking about no Caucasian people like right now. All right. What you got to remember is that a lot of these Holy Crusades or a lot of these old wars between, we can just say, the Muslim or the Arabic Moorish world of the so-called Levant or Middle East, which you all know of as the Ottoman Empire or the Turkish Empire. These Moors actually were fighting against, we could say, long distant relatives who were in the northern parts of Europa, dealing with those Germanic Holy Roman Empire families. So you had a lot of conflicts between Moors from northern Europa and Moors that were from the south around the so-called Mediterranean Sea or the so-called Middle East. And there was a lot of conflicts involved between these two. That's why later on you had the amalgamated Spanish and the Caucasian Christians that rose out of the Holy Roman Empire, because they were actually once the slaves and they were once the amalgamated children of these old Moors from northern Europa. All right. That's why when you look into the bloodlines of, so-called Albion or so-called Great Britain, they're going to go back to ancient Moorish, ancient so-called black people. All right. Because the original inhabitants of northern Europa were these so-called black people or these Moors. And they had a lot of conflicts with their, Muslim or their Arabic relatives in the south. All right. In the areas of so-called East Africa or the Middle East. So I just wanted to go into that so you could see that, this ancient connection, okay, between all these people. So now we're going to move on to the next part. Okay. So right now, we're going to read a little bit about Chief Black Hawk or Chief Black Heru. All right. Because I've told you all quite often that Heru, or so-called Horus, the Christ, is actually the Christ of the Americas. All right. Not only is it Quetzalcoatl, but it's also Heru. So in a lot of the different, so-called Native American cultures, you will see them closely associating themselves with eagles, hawks, and snakes. Okay. And the reason why is because all of these are ancient Heru symbols. And this also shows up in a lot of the names of the so-called Native Americans. So if you want to know what the culture and the language was of the so-called Aboriginal Americans, you got to look into what's called Aramaic, Arab, Hebrew, Phoenician, ancient Latin, etc. Okay, these were the languages that they were speaking. So it was a multiplicity of languages here, but all these languages were stemming from some of the older, more pre-Diluvian or the languages that were spoken during the times of Atlantis and Lemuria. This is where these languages were coming from. So although today, let's say, for example, how we speak English and we call English, one language, but English actually is made up of a lot of different languages: Egyptian, Hebrew, Phoenician, Aramaic, etc. Okay. Now, these languages are all stemming from a much older ancient language. So a much older ancient language will be like Sanskrit. Okay. Now, Sanskrit is one of the oldest languages on the planet. All right. And when you get to your Ethiopian or so-called Egyptian hieroglyphic, this is where these old Canaanite or these old Genesis languages are coming from. All right. So you got to remember that, no language you speaking is actually a brand new language. It's actually the remnant of a much older language. All right. So just like I read a little while ago, how our Aboriginal ancestors here were speaking the original form of what we call Arabic. All right. But now the people that you see that call themselves Muslims or Arabs, they speaking, the more modern version of the Arabic language, whereas we were dealing with the more ancient version of it. All right. So now I'm going to read about one of these Christ heroes, or one of the Aboriginal ancestors who was very, very big on fighting against these bleached out, Franciscan, Europeans, children of Yaqub that were coming into the Americas trying to bother our people. I'm going to read about one of them right here. Chief Black Hawk, or his indigenous name was Maka Time Meshkia. All right. Maka Time Meshkia. It's just a very, very hard name to pronounce, but you spell it MakatameshekIah. Now, although this name sounds very, very funny, when I break it down in a minute, you're going to see that this name contains a lot of Hebrew, Egyptian, and Arabic. Okay. So a lot of these so-called Native American names that sound very funny to you all, such as like Choctaw, Muskogee, Algonquin, and all these weird sounding names, believe it or not, these names are a mixture of Aramaic, Hebrew, and Egyptian. All right. And when you break down these names, these are going to be the roots of where you found this stuff. This is how Barry Fell can correlate where these languages are coming from. He's taking the names of these Aboriginals. He's taking the rivers and he's taking the names that they, named their areas. And then he's just seeing, well, where do these, syllables show up in besides just America? And when he's looking into it, he's seeing like, wait a minute, this sounds Hebrew. This sounds Aramaic. This sounds Egyptian. You see what I'm saying? This is what's going down. So let's read about Chief Black Hawk. All right. Now you're going to know why it's called Black Hawk in a minute. Chief Black Hawk was the chief of the Sioux, or the Sauk, the Sauk or the Sioux, where Sioux actually is Sioux. So it wouldn't be Sioux, because those are another Aboriginal tribe. You have your Sioux Aborigines. But Chief Black Hawk was the chief of the Sauk. His birthday is not known. The name Black Hawk is reminiscent of the Black Hawk, or falcon of Kemetic tradition, representing Horus or Heru, the resurrected son of Osiris, the anointed one. Black Hawk was born MakatameshekIah. That's how you pronounce his name. MakatameshekIah. MakatameshekIah. That's how you pronounce his name. Mashiach is the Hebrew word for Messiah. Literally means the anointed, as we can see this is part of his name. So this brother's name is Makatai Meshikaya. And they're saying that this last part of his name, Meshikaya, is the Hebrew word for Messiah. So in this man's last name is, well, it's not his last name, but it's the last part of his first name. His whole full first name is Makatai Meshikaya. Makatai Meshikaya. But the last part, Meshikaya, they're saying right here is Meshikaya is the Hebrew word for Messiah, which literally means the anointed one. His last public appearance was ironically July the 4th, 1837, a special day in ancient Moorish, Israelite, or Egyptian culture in respect to astronomical science. His attire in this painting is very Moorish in tradition. Black Hawk was a terror for the whites in the 1800s and is a part of the legacy of black people who have been written off under Red Indian history and disassociated from black people as their lineal ancestors, of which they are. The resemblance to Honorable Elijah Muhammad is strikingly similar. So here's a picture of him real quick. I'm going to show you. Hold on. So this is a picture right here of this Aborigine that we're talking about by the name of Makatai Meshikaya. Makatai Meshikaya. Okay. The Hebrew Aborigine Christ. And as you can see, it's a so-called copper-colored Aborigine man or a so-called black man. All right. So this is Chief Heru, the chief of the Sauk tribe. All right. Aboriginal indigenous to America. Another thing I want you all to remember, too, is that you're going to hear a lot of the Moorish Hebrew or the Moorish Israelite bloodline being connected with the Egyptian bloodline. And this is going to take you back to the times of so-called the Old Testament and the conflicts between what you all know of as the Egyptians and the Hebrews. What you got to remember is that the Egyptians and the Hebrews, believe it or not, are stemming from the same Aboriginal ancestry. OK, now the Hebrews or the Israelites are basically a certain bloodline or a certain dynastic family, we can say, of the entire Egyptian Ethiopian dynasty, we can say, or monarchy. All right. So you're going to always hear a lot of Moorish Israelite or Moorish Egyptian correlations, because as I'm telling you, these people and these heritages, they overlap each other. All right. And you got to also remember this, too. Just like Algonquin is a language, Hebrew is a language. OK, so we got to look more so, well, who are these people? And if we clearly see that they're the same people, then that means that they just had these different languages, you know. Now let's continue. All right. So now let's read a little bit about the Choctaws. OK, the Choctaw, there are rambling hunting parties of them to be met with all over Louisiana. They are at war with the Caldugis and liked by neither the red nor the white people. April the 5th, 1805. So these Choctaw Aborigines were another group of, you know, so-called black people in the South who were constantly fighting against these red people and these white people. Now, when I say the red people, what I'm talking about here is the amalgamated so-called Native Americans who were escaping from these slave, you know, plantations that they were on, that were ruled by these Holy Roman emperors, these old Moorish families who had property here in America. A lot of these Caucasians were, you know, wanted to escape from them because they were being basically subjugated by these Moors. And when they would escape from them, they would come more into the different lands of America, and they would come across us, Aboriginals with feathers and stuff in their head. So our cousins or our relatives that had plantations along the coast of the Americas, the East Coast, they had their own Caucasian slaves working on those plantations. Those Caucasian slaves would run off those plantations. And then a lot of the Aborigines here, you know, we would capture these Caucasians and send them back to these plantations to our relatives so they can keep working. But some of them also entered into our tribes and amalgamated with us. So this is where you get these Native Americans that you see today. These people that look Caucasian, that have the black stringy hair. And a lot of us are calling them Mongoloid and stuff like that. A lot of that is wrong. They really are just a mixture between Aboriginal Americans who come from various copper-colored or various so-called black ethnicities. And then these people mixed in with these European Caucasians. And this is how you have the so-called Native American of today. All right. Let's keep going. To the right is I'm going to go into another Aborigine Christ figure that was fighting against these people. Okay, we're about to read into another one. Mahasaka. Okay, Mahasaka. To the right is Mahasaka, another chief with the Aramaic Hebrew names. Like I told you, a lot of these names are Egyptian, Aramaic, Phoenician, and Hebrew. All right. Mahasaka means the one with man horns, as the painting shows, and is represented his chiefdom. He and his father were recorded to have been in 18 battles with the United States and never lost one. Let me repeat. He and his father were recorded to have been in 18 battles with the United States and never lost one. He and his fathers were allies of the Black Hawk Makatameshikia. Okay, so this brother by the name of Mahakska, was actually teaming up with that Black Heru, or the Black Hawk, the Hebrew Christ, Makata Mishikaya. Okay, so these Aborigines were teaming up to fight these motherfuckers. He traveled with his father to Washington, D.C. in 1824 to meet with President John Quincy Adams. The Secretary of State was Henry Clay. These two, Adams and Clay, were later ordered by Abdur Rahman ibn Hisham to release Abraham ibn Sori, the prince of the slaves, in 1828. Abraham had been touring all over the West, speaking with these chiefs about the laws that were being used to free him under the Moorish statutes, or Moorish status, In the 1840s, the government made many treaties with Native Americans and land deals in Oklahoma, Louisiana, and Kansas. John Quitman and Eliza Tunica, the mother and father of Noble Drew Ali, among many other family members, were a part of these transactions and interactions. So you got to remember that a lot of these Aborigines, such as the brother Black Hawk and such as the brother Mahaska, they were fighting these people, and these people could not, defeat us. Okay. So a lot of them had to, have little fake ass treaties and little fake ass peace this and peace that to stop the fighting. Okay. And then a lot of the land and things were actually distributed, based on this. So a lot of you all that are Aboriginal to the South, a lot of your ancestors got their land. They always had their land, but they were actually, doing a lot of these deals with the United States. You know what I'm saying? To get the United States to say, look, we understand this y'all land, so at least please let us stay over here. And then some of these Aborigines may have said yay or nay. All right, let's keep going. After the Lewis and Clark spy mission, the United States brought 59 European families into the Louisiana territory under the guard of the United States Army. Because you got to remember that during this time, the French, which were actually another group of amalgamated, bleached out Moors, they were trying to come into the South and steal land too. This is where you get that whole Louisiana Purchase from, with this guy Napoleon and all this stuff. But you got to remember that Napoleon didn't own this land. Okay, he did not own this land. Let's keep going. The military poisoned the water supply with the intent of murdering off the original Aboriginal indigenous black population. Don't that sound real familiar? It says the military poisoned the water supply with the intent of murdering off the original indigenous black population. So they saying that after the Lewis and Clark spy missions, the United States brought 59 families into the Louisiana territory under the guard of the United States Army. And then it says that the military poisoned the water supply with the intent of murdering off the original indigenous black population. So now you understand the whole Flint, Michigan thing and why they always are attacking the water systems that so-called black people live in. This is part of the bubonic plague and the smallpox and all the sickness that they gave to our people. They brought their school curriculums as they enslaved and murdered the black populations, making claims that the black indigenous peoples were fugitives from justice under constitutional law and were European property from Africa. However, the people did not consider themselves by nationality or status as Africans until after this was breeded into them. So you see right here that these Caucasian Europeans under the United States were coming into the South, trying to poison the water and kick our people out of Louisiana, and then tried to rebrand them and rename them as Africans, and were saying that they were African property. But the Aboriginals did not label themselves as this shit, and that's where the wars come in. They were of Tamari and were Moors or Moors. This word African is a word of the white colonizer. There is evidence of this deceptive activity to falsify our status that is undeniable. It was part of a plan to wipe out our indigenous history in America. The names like Tunica and Washita were turned into Turner and Washington. So now I want to read about some of these wars that we had with them on this soil, and we'll wrap it up. So wars with the Aboriginal Moors. 1752, so-called French and Indian Wars were wars between the Moors or the Black Knights Templars, okay, the Black Knights Templar families, and the Aboriginal Moors versus the British colonists and Great Britain. So now you have what's known as the French and Indian War. On one side, you had a group of Moors that were known as the Black Knights Templars, and these Moors were teaming up with some Aboriginal indigenous Moors. That's on one side of it. So you have these, some of them may have been amalgamated French, some of them probably original Moorish French. And this side of the family was teaming up with certain Aboriginal Moors that were from the land. And then on the opposite side, you had the British colonists, which were these European settlers, and then some of the Moors that were ruling over Albion, or the Moors of the Brutish Holy Roman Empire, okay, the Moors from Northern Europe, what we know of as so-called Britain, going against these Moors. So although I'm saying the French and Indian War, you got to remember that you got Aboriginal Moors on both sides of the conflicts. Then you have amalgamated Moors on the French side, and then you have some amalgamated Moors on the British side. So really, we talking about light-skinned Moors teaming up with dark-skinned Moors, fighting against other light-skinned Moors, teaming up with other dark-skinned Moors. Okay. Now, the French and the British look white today because these amalgamated Moors, they kept mixing their blood in with other Caucasians. So this is why the French and the British look white today. Okay. Or fully Caucasian. Let's continue. In 1776, the sons of Saint Tammany allied with the Moors to fight against the British colonists in Great Britain. You all know about that war. Some of the British colonists infiltrated the Moors and Sons of Liberty, aka Sons of Saint Tammany, in order to overthrow the Moors. They were people like Thomas Jefferson, George Washington, Andrew Hamilton, Benjamin Franklin. Moors titled Negroes by the United States. So what happened is a lot of these Caucasians and a lot of these amalgamated French, a lot of these amalgamated Arabs, a lot of these amalgamated Europeans, a lot of them began to start betraying the Moors who they were teaming up and helping. And they started to basically use greed. So today, you know how everything is based on the color code system. It wasn't like that back then. It was more so about the power. But then these European Caucasians started to consolidate based on how they look, because they saw that it's a whole lot more Moors than it is us. So this is a part of that history that they don't want us to really know about, but we really want all sides of this conflict. It's the boy Blackbeard. Stay tuned for the next tape. I'm out.